Hey everyone, welcome to the Future of Civic Volunteering. My name is Hannah Young. I'm the Brigade Program Manager at Code for America. And we have an awesome panel here today to talk about volunteering, how we approach volunteering at Code for America, and these guys are all experts. So before we get started, I just want to get a sense in the room of who's here. So if you are in a brigade in your local community, will you raise your hand? All right. If you are a government partner to a local brigade, could you raise your hand? All right, thank you. Woo! And then if this is your first time hearing about the brigade and this is kind of a new concept, could you also raise your hand? Awesome. Cool. Well, hopefully we'll have some good information for you, and we're going to try to spend a lot of time on questions, so feel free to jot those down and keep a list of them so that we can get those answered for you before you leave today. All right, so I wanted to first start out just by talking about where the brigades, or how the brigade started and kind of how far we've come. So we're lucky enough to have Kevin Curry here, who actually was the original, I don't even know what your title was, but he started the brigade program at Code for America. And when you guys started, it was 16 brigades led by 19 captains. Is that correct? Yep. And so this is a photo of that first summit, the first meeting. They were in the Code for America basement, if I'm getting that right, which is, just, I'm sure, the place of honor. But I heard you guys got a ton done, and it was amazing. And so that was kind of the first time that everyone came together and really talked about this stuff. And Kevin, I'm hoping is going to talk a little bit more about just getting started and all of that in a second. Fast forward to 2013, so last year, this was what the captains gathering looked like, which is already a pretty insane growth. So there were 34 brigades represented. I think there were 64 captains, 3 international brigades. So that was pretty big, and we were really impressed with it. We were blown out of the water that many people could come to San Francisco that were doing this work, and it was just a really exciting time. But this year, we have, I'm going to even look at this because it keeps changing. So we have 87 official chapters, 55 brigades getting started, 150 captains, 64 core team members supporting those captains, and about 5,000 members globally. So that's a pretty steep growth curve for 3 years. So we're going to talk through kind of what are the trends emerging in that, what kind of these folks have done in their local communities. And yeah, then hopefully answer a lot of questions you guys might have about volunteering, civic tech, etc. So I'm going to sit down, but if you guys can't hear us or see us and you want us to stand up, I'm happy to do that. So I think the first thing we should do is maybe introduce ourselves. So kind of the first question I had, and maybe this can be our way of introduction, is just who are you guys and how did you guys get your brigade started? And maybe I'll kick it to Kevin to talk about the brigade program maybe when he first started it. Yeah, exactly. So.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kevin. I was the first program director. Before Brigade, there was a thing called City Camp that created a civic tech community that really thrived. And so I want to say, why does Brigade exist? I think we probably should start with that, as how did it even come about? And it's really basically a supply and demand thing. So in the first year of Code for America, there were almost 400 people that applied for about 12 positions. And out of the people who were applying, there were an incredible number of smart, talented people for whom we didn't want to just say, sorry, no, try again next year. And on top of that, there were a lot of people like me for whom the fellowship wasn't really an option. I'm established at home. I'm a homeowner. I have a child. I'm kind of, I live where I live. I couldn't come and do a fellowship. So with that incredible amount of supply and demand, we were trying to figure out, okay, how can we leverage this group of people? And then we could tell that since we started, we didn't really exactly how we were going to put this together and what people were going to do, but we could tell obviously through the map, there are just a tremendous amount of people who want to do this. And so now I'm not with Code for America anymore, except I'm a brigade captain in Hampton Roads, Virginia Beach. So I'm back to being a volunteer.
Awesome. Thanks, Kevin. Yeah, that's great. And thanks for that background. Do you guys want to talk a little bit about how you guys joined the brigade then? So Spike and Harlan and Christopher were part of the first class of captains in the basement. And then Rebecca and Ernie, they joined in Miami in the second year. So we have a good range of folks who came into the program at different times. So Spike, do you maybe want to give a little background how you kind of found out about Code for America how you plugged in and then how you started your group?
Sure. So I'd been part of a social justice-based organization that does research and innovation for changing communities, making them better for everyone. And as part of that, we're part of a network called the NNIP, a bunch of indicated geeks that work around the country. And through that, I heard about CityCamp and ended up at CityCamp in San Francisco and ran into Jen. And we just had such aligned ideas and principles and values around how this stuff could be better, how communities need to trust government better, and everything just sort of resonated. So I started mentoring with Code for America, and then as Eddie and I were getting towards the middle of the fellowship, we realized that the hackathons we'd been doing were cool and they were good for community building, but they weren't doing much to change our cities. And so we decided that we needed to create a backbone organization that provided a level of sustainability for the civic hacking that we wanted to encourage in the city. We had amazing people in the city. We had good people inside City Hall that wanted to do things differently but didn't have the resources or the tech to do it. And we had great open source tools being built around the country. And so we started a new organization at the same time as the Brigade concept got thrown out, that there's this new idea, you can be part of this thing. It seemed like a perfect nexus of, we want to be able to leverage the talent in our communities, change government, make our community relationships better with government, and push the agenda that we had around open government and open source. And so we created that organization to do that. For a minute there, we almost started an open source services company because we thought that was the other mechanism to get government using better open source tech, but we decided the community building organization, the Brigade approach, was actually a lot more fun sounding, and we're right.
And Spick, do you just want to say where you're from and what your group is, or what your name is?
From Oakland. We're called Open Oakland.
Great. Thanks.
Which is really confusing because we had a Code for Oakland event 2 years prior that we were a part of, and now everyone confuses Code for America, Code for Oakland, Open Oakland. It's a mess. Our mistake.
Harlan, you want to talk a little bit about how you got started and say where you're from and your guys' brigade name?
So my name is Harlan Weber. I'm the brigade organizer at Code for Boston, along with Matt Cloyd, who may or may not be in this room. So I have sort of a very different first part of the story, I think, from Spike. It's more kind of on the personal side. So I'm a UX designer, and for the first part of my career, I worked in agencies that were working on medical devices, or I also worked for Intuit. And the work that they were doing, even though it was for profit, still had a lot of social benefit. So working on something that helps a heart surgeon see a hazardous condition like 10 seconds earlier, like saves a couple hundred people per year. And that was something I really took home for me. And then I started working at a startup that was more B2B, didn't really have the same sort of like emotional resonance and emotional value. I felt like the work I was doing was not impacting the world in the way that I wanted to do it. And so I was looking around for a way to do that, to take the skills I developed in the private sector and to apply them in a way that was more socially beneficial. And I had a totally fortuitous interaction with a family member who works at a nonprofit here in San Francisco, who was doing some work with Jack Maddens at Code for America, who was originally helping Kevin to run the Brigade program. And so my cousin hooked us up, and kind of away we went. We're lucky in Boston in that we have a really rich civic tech ecosystem already. The Mayor's Office of New Urban Mechanics, the City of Boston, Holly St. Clair and her data services group at the Metropolitan Area Planning Council. And so a lot of our early work was really building community around these organizations that were all doing that work, but weren't really talking to each other as much or as often or integrating with each other as richly as they could be. And so our first kind of steps were to really identify the civic tech ecosystem in Boston and start bringing those groups together to work on projects and to interface with citizens in a way that, much like myself, they were looking to use their skills to kind of do that work. So.
Great, thanks. Chris?
So my name is Christopher Whitaker. I am the Code for America captain for the City of Chicago. When I first heard about Code for America, I was working in a field office for the state of Illinois unemployment security office. Essentially, if you had a problem with your unemployment claim or you were a problem person, you ended up seeing me. So the system I was using was from 1975. It's a DOS-based system.
It was a good year.
It was a good year. It was a good year, but not so much for software. So I am having all these frustrations with the level of technology that I have to use to help my neighbors, and then I'm looking out into the universe and I see Code for America and the work that they're doing, and was just really impressed and like, yes, more of this. Chicago had actually already had been meeting regularly. There's a meetup group called OpenGov Chicago, which is focused a lot on OpenGov transparency, data journalism, and whenever Rahm Emanuel had been elected, they created an Apps for Metro Chicago app contest that ran for about a year. They had several hackathons, and in the course of the hackathons, the people who had been showing up to go to the OpenGov Chicago meetings, and they were going to hackathons, and quickly realized that, to build civic apps that are sustainable and that have actual impact, this is not a weekend thing. There's no way we can cram all of that into a single weekend. And so Derek Eater, Juan Pablo Velez, started hosting an OpenGov Hack Night in the offices of Webitex, which was a room about the size of Code for America's basement. We've now been meeting regularly for about 3 years, and we have about an average attendance of around 60 to 80 people, depending on what's going on. So when we actually started the brigade, we actually started the Hack Nights about 4 months prior to the launch of Brigades. And so when the Brigade program was announced and they started asking for captains, my viewpoint was, so we're already meeting regularly, so we don't need to duplicate it, but I still want to tap into all this awesome resources and network that Code for America has. So I applied to be the captain, met Dan O'Neill, started doing consulting work for Dan O'Neill, and then everything sort of rolled from there.
Cool.
Great. And then Rebecca?
Hey, I'm Rebecca Monson. I'm from Miami. I'm a co-captain of Code for Miami. So I got started late compared to these guys. These are like OGs right here. And in fact, they were super inspiring because Miami has this sort of nascent tech scene that we like to talk about a lot, but it's sort of bubbling along, at a very slow boil. And I had gotten involved with that because I left journalism primarily because I was frustrated that I couldn't do the sort of technology work that I wanted to do within a daily newspaper in my region. So I decided to go to grad school, but I wanted to stay connected. My initial goal was, how can I level up tech education for journalists in my city and in my region? And I started a group called Hacks Hackers, and I learned really quickly, man, I really need to hook up with people who are interested in open government and civic hacking. And I found a local wiki that Ernie had started and reached out to him and was like, hey, are there any more people like you in town? We should get together. And Ernie's like, nope. This was my project. And I was like, okay. And I was like, well, we should start a civic hacking group. I think it would be fun, and let's do it. He's like, I don't have time for that. And I was like, I don't have time for that either. Again, let's do it. So that's just sort of how it happened. And really, we started planning with a group of people around Miami, wanted to do something for National Day of Civic Hacking, but they wanted to do this one-off thing. And I got to be honest with you, I have very little interest in one-off things. So I wanted to make sure that if we did this big splashy thing, that there was going to be follow-up and sort of a continual place where people could go learn or do something or contribute. So the Brigade model was a perfect fit for that. And these guys had already sort of laid out very clearly the steps we needed to take to make that happen. And after we did National Day of Civic Hacking, we started just meeting weekly, and since then the brigade has grown. And we at National Day of Civic Hacking, our city partners from Miami-Dade County, they participated in that, and they've been with us every step of the way. So we were very fortunate. I think that we had all these great examples to draw from.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a good segue. Like Rebecca was saying, a lot of our brigades meet. A really common characteristic of a brigade is to meet really consistently, so either every week or twice a month or every month. It's something that we ask Brigades to do is have some sort of consistent way of meeting so that people can easily find them and join and do things like that. And you guys all do that. All of our groups have volunteers that are doing this work. But what makes these guys unique and why this panel is set up the way that it is that each of you and your brigades have kind of taken part of, or maybe your whole organization, to kind of the next level. And so they're doing things that are kind of shoring up their organization for sustainability. And so we really wanted to ask you guys about each of you, about kind of the ways that you're focusing on sustainability in your organization. And maybe Spike, it'd be great to hear from you about how Open Oakland is kind of talking about, or is becoming a nonprofit, and kind of your path there.
Sure. So we, after about a year in, we're a bit over 2 years old now, we realized that essentially what we were looking like was a community organizing group. We were centrally structured, we had some loose leadership, and we were leveraging a lot of capacity at the base essentially to actually move what we were thinking was our agenda. And a little bit after that, we started to realize that it wasn't sustainable for us to build the kind of partnerships we wanted across the city and the CBOs and community organizations, and to build trust in City Hall at the rate we were doing long term without actual people to do this work full time. And we realized that we were being hampered. We had a lot of bottlenecks despite an amazing group of people. And we didn't see another mechanism to do it besides becoming an organization. And it was kind of humbling because I publicly declared that Oakland doesn't need any more damn nonprofits, and now we're another nonprofit. So, but unfortunately, that was, I generally move to where there's a need and try and fill that. And we had a mechanism that we could use with fiscal sponsorship to actually start attracting some funds and to get supporters and to start moving down the path of creating an organization that actually would sustain this work, that would be an organization that the city could trust to work with, that other regional cities could also trust to work with and scale what we're doing, and to bring in our ideas into other city agencies. But it could also be an effective partner, because being a partner takes a crap ton of time. It takes a lot of communication and a lot of back and forth and a lot of 9 to 5 hours where we all had jobs largely, and that's not compatible. So we've incorporated, and we are right now building an executive leadership team of 8 people to take on these roles we've identified. There's some alignment with the core roles that CFA identified, and there's some others that we thought would necessary to do our work effectively. We've been holding a series of leadership retreats this year to figure out just who are we, because we formed with 2 people as captains, and not really a democratic organization, just here's a bunch of things we can do, there's a strategy and a vision, and let's do them. And now we need to figure out how we make decisions, and what does that mean if the executive make a decision, and if we're all volunteers, and how do we split that with potential contract work. So we're facing some really fun challenges right now of how we exist as an entity, what our relationship is with CFA, and what the brigade means to us, because it's a core of our being, how we're started. And so we're having that fun challenge right now, figuring out what is our identity, how do we exist as an organization to sustain this work, and how do we also grow that model within Code for America's network as well. So that's where we're at right now.
Great. Chris, you can probably talk a little bit about the kind of similar in Chicago. You guys are, out of Smart Chicago, the Brigade is kind of run as a program. And so maybe talk a little bit about what that means for you guys in terms of what your ability is beyond just volunteering, and the role of civic startups in Chicago and stuff like that.
Definitely. So the Smart Chicago Collaborative is a nonprofit organization that acts kind of as a center of gravity for civic innovation in Chicago. We have 3 board members: the Chicago Community Trust, which we live inside of, the City of Chicago, which we take direction from but we don't take funding from, and then the MacArthur Foundation, which provides a significant amount of funding. Smart Chicago is only 3 employees: Dan O'Neill, who's executive director, Sonia Marziano, who's program officer, and then Kyla Williams, who is also program officer. She handles all the budgets, all the finances, and all the contracts. Everything else is contracted out with consultants or vendors, including my role. So one of the things that I've been able to do is live stream every single hack night for the past 2 years. I blog about every hack night. I live tweet the hack nights. And so now we have this very rich history that I'm able to pull up And so anytime I'm in the Code for America network and somebody asks me something about flu shots, I can then go, oh, we've done something like that, or we know something about that, and I can sort of connect them to that role or to the developer who created that. The other thing that we've been able to do is Smart Chicago received a grant from the Knight Foundation called the Civic Works Project. We're building 10 different apps, 5 government-focused, 5 nonprofit-focused. To build those apps, I can then go to the people who attend Hack Night and are doing all this great work on their volunteer time and go, hey, what you do is really, really cool. Can you build this for us, and I'm going to pay you to build this? So that's helping sort of civic hackers go from volunteers to going pro. In March, we hired Josh Kalov to help open up county data as a consultant for Smart Chicago. And so we're sort of through Smart Chicago, we have an avenue to help pay people for the awesome work that they're doing.
Great. How long did it take to get to that point where people were offering to pay civic hackers for things that they were really interested in working on in Chicago?
So Smart Chicago, in 2010, when Dan joined Smart Chicago as the executive director, they had a broadband technology opportunity grant to do digital divide issues. And as part of that, they were able to pay Derek Eater with DataMade to help build the We Connect Chicago website. Using that as a model, they went after the Knight grants. And once they got the Knight grant, we immediately started like reaching out to people and writing checks.
Cool, thanks. Yeah, so both Spike and Christopher, already kind of have a structure or some sort of institution that they're either creating or that they're a part of that really is where the Brigade sits in their community. It sits under that organization. And like they both mentioned, there's some pros and cons to that, but the pros being that it might free you up to do a bit more, potentially have some projects folks can work on more than just a volunteer basis and things like that. And so that can be a really amazing opportunity for a brigade to kind of take their brigade a little bit further than just a volunteer group and really have some more opportunities for the civic hackers in their community. So kind of pivoting from that, so if you're still a volunteer group and you're, a lot of brigades across the country, they have the capacity to get volunteers out. There's enthusiasm. But a lot of times what we see is that brigades that are really successful, that's too much work for someone to do full time. And the way the brigade that it was set up in the beginning was there was probably 1 or 2 leaders that were kind of driving the brigade, leading it in their communities. And they were getting really overwhelmed because if they were doing a lot of this work and a lot of folks were coming through the doors, raising their hands, wanting to volunteer, they were completely swamped. And so Harlan, you guys have done a great job in Boston with something that we call core team members. Is that a concept that's familiar in the room? Yes. All right, so core team members are basically folks on a leadership team instead of just having 1 or 2 leaders and having a group be personality driven, trying to get away from that concept and having kind of responsibility dispersed in a group. And so Harlan, can you talk a little bit about how you guys have done that in Boston? Because you guys have a pretty robust structure there.
I wouldn't say that they don't have any personalities. Not, yeah.
It's just that if you get hit by a bus, the thing will stay.
I hope it'll stop for a little while. So it's all a question of sustainability, right? So I think so as you heard kind of in our origin stories, Christopher and Spike got started as brigades a little bit before kind of the formal launch of the brigade captain program. So I always think that we're at Code for Boston, we're sort of like about 6 to 8 months behind where these guys are in the maturation curve of the organization. And so we're starting to run into some of these sustainability things, and we were starting to do it kind of like just about on schedule. And so before we embark on our own kind of investigation of taking that next step to become a formal structure means, we built out our core team kind of in accordance with some of the guidance we've been getting from Code for America. We have core team members. So we have 2 the way our organizational structure is we have 2 captains, myself and Matt Cloyd, a community team lead, Lear Calliope, and another community catalyst is what we call him, working kind of underneath him. We have a storyteller who's kind of in charge of communications with the press, runs our Twitter, does some blogging, and our delivery lead position is there, but it's in flux because he's moving to LA, where I hope he will enjoy
Anyone from LA here? You guys can.
a similar position with LA. But the core team structure has really enabled us to do more and to engage our community more and to really engage with our community partners more. Because prior to the kind of formation of the core team, it was me, like basically living in email, communicating with community partners, communicating with brigade members, helping them find projects. When Matt came on as a co-captain, that was an immense help, but it still wasn't allowing us to be as functional as we wanted and really to be engaging with the communities that we wanted to be engaging with. And so we have our community team really focusing on internal community, but also building some external partnerships. Our communications lead really working to get the word out about the work that we're doing, and our delivery folks kind of focused on making sure the projects are running smoothly. But in terms of going pro, I wanted to kind of touch on that for one quick second. One thing that we've been finding is not just kind of about becoming organizationally professional, but one of the things we're tracking is how many of our people we can place into government positions or government adjacent positions. And so we've managed to place 4 people from our brigade into government roles, which is another way, I think, of integrating the thought process and the procedures and the way of thinking about civic technology that we develop in the brigade into kind of injecting that forcefully into the government.
Great. Yeah, so the core team really sounds like a way that at least you guys probably still are spending a lot of time outside of your day jobs doing civic hacking and building the brigade, but it's really helped kind of maybe take those hours down or disperse that responsibility a bit more.
You know, it's funny. I would say it has not taken the hours down, but what it's enabled is more stuff to happen.
Yeah.
Because everybody is operating at the similarly high level, and so instead of just what Matt and I can focus on, it's now what like 6 or 7 people can focus on, and so it's increased our integration with our city partners, and it's increased the breadth of things that we can do.
Awesome. Cool. So I know we have 15 minutes left, so we're going to kick into questions right after I ask Rebecca to just talk a bit about, so in Miami, you guys kind of have a unique situation, and you guys are thinking about like how to shore up your coding community. So talking about teaching new coders and kind of building that membership.
Yeah, so we're in a much different position than Oakland or Boston or Chicago, in that our tech scene is like it's a very different place, and it's our goal is in Code for Miami is if you come in the door, you have a job to do, right? So, and if you want to learn something, we'll pair you off with someone who can teach you something, and you're going to do that in service to Miami, and that's sort of just the mission of the group. We tell everyone that at the beginning, and all of these guys do that very same thing. But for us, that's become just really a core goal because, you look at the stats, every time they do surveys about big cities and civic engagement, Miami's at the bottom of the list. So one of our big goals is to show people that whatever skills you bring to the table, you can use those to serve your community. And for us, the brigade is really driven toward that. And we're interested in building products and prototypes and all of those things as well. But as much as we care about that, like the thing that I think really drives me and Ernie is how many people can we get invested in the city itself or in the county in doing civic work, because it's just not part of our community in a way it may be somewhere else. So it's a slightly different focus, but it's really worked out for us, and I think that sort of inclusivity goal and to show everyone that you have some kind of skill, like if you can't code, you can write. If you want to learn how to code, we'll teach you how to do HTML. If you like whatever it is that you bring to the table, maybe take photos. We have sites where you can put photos up. Like whatever you do, we want you to use it to make Miami better. So that's kind of like what pushes us forward.
That's great. Yeah, I would clap for that too. So yeah, we want to give you guys time to ask questions. There's a lot of brigade folks in the room, so Yeah, does anyone have any questions they're dying to ask? And maybe stand up and say your name and where you're from.
Sure. I'm Travis. I work for Congressman Waxman from DC. I'm just curious for the folks that have taken on like paid staff, if that's changed the dynamic at all with the volunteers, and how that's worked, or maybe it's been seamless.
So there's app projects that we could do on volunteer time. They're short, they're simple, we're redeploying them from open source software. A good example is when Chicago public school teachers went on strike, Josh Kalov used Derek Eater's searchable map template to make a very quick website showing all the places where you could send your child because they can't be in school. That we could do at a hack night. Large lots, that can't be done volunteer because that's a massive project with a lot of moving parts, and it's something that's worth every penny because it has such a tremendous impact in the community. But to get that level of app, you have to pay somebody. So that's sort of been, so they exist side by side, and there's not really much conflict in that because the same people who are, getting paid to build the apps are also running the hack night and advising people and teaching and growing that community so that a year from now, we'll have more people who are working full-time doing civic hacking.
Yep.
Yeah, do you guys have anything?
No paid staff, so.
Yeah, we're not to that point, but I think the point here is that you hit a point when you realize that the future cannot be built on pizza.
That's right.
So you hit a point where you have to professionalize, and like we can't do I love what we do and it's really important and it's great, but the best that I'm going to be able to turn out for Mike is a prototype of hey, you gave us this data dump, we made something awesome with it. I don't have people to maintain that or whatever. So there comes a point when the stuff that Spike and Chris are doing becomes very important if you want to make this civic tech ecosystem in your city like a real thing. So that's the thing that I think is really exciting. We're not there yet, but I can see it down the road, and it's and I think most brigade captains have their eyes on that as something that could really improve the future of their communities.
Yeah, I think that's a thing we've been very cognizant of since the very beginning in Boston, is there is a ceiling to what you can accomplish on volunteer time, right? Even just on a scheduling perspective, they all have 9-to-5 jobs.
Yep.
If we're going to go in and do a real development project with real user research, we have to go where the government
just
folks
having
are,
meetings with government.
Yeah.
I mean, I love you guys, but you work during the day and I work during the day, and so Mike comes on his off time and it's great. But having those interactions that you need to do a big project, you can't do it. So.
Yep.
Cool. Next.
I just had a question about Smart Chicago.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Jesse Michael, I'm from Code for Asheville. And I just wanted to ask, obviously when you get into, a non-volunteer situation with the government, they become a stakeholder, an investor, and I was just wondering, could you speak to the dynamic there? Obviously they're, are they giving money towards a project? Is there any sort of flexibility with, do you have any sort of autonomy once they give you the money to kind of change direction? Or?
So the hack night, just to clarify, the hack night is not a Smart Chicago thing. The hack night is supported by Smart Chicago in that they pay me to be there, to live tweet, to live stream. And then when we do big National Day of Civic Hacking events, Smart Chicago will be a sponsor, we'll rent out space, we'll buy food. So the way the hack nights are run, it's very loose. No one is grabbing someone by the shoulders and going, you must learn Ruby, or you must work on my thing, because that is the thing that the brigade is doing right now. It's all whatever you want to work on. We're there to support you. We have breakout sessions now where on education, transportation, social services, and at the end of us sort of announcing those breakout sessions, we always ask, does anything of this sound interesting to you? If this all sounds like not fun things and you have something that you want to do, announce it to the group and you'll start your own breakout group. So on the other side of the house, once we get into a vendor-client relationship, then it's a little more tight because now I'm paying you to build something and I needed something very specific because I'm talking to this nonprofit partner, and we understand their needs and their challenges, and so then we're going to get something very specific. But because we're asking for something specific, we're going to cut you a check.
And that like not conflict, but that tension is one of the reasons why we're kind of thinking about moving ahead ourselves, because we've got government partners and local nonprofit partners coming to us and saying, can you help us build this thing? And I'm in the unfortunate position of often having to say no because we can't sync to a timeline because it's all volunteer stuff. I can't commit to delivery by November 4th because what if the developer, like, you know, what if he goes on
Moves to
vacation?
LA.
What if he gets sick? What if he moves to LA? Like, there are limits to what you can do because it's all volunteer. So.
And part of our approach on top of that is that we need capacity to innovate within the brigade. At some point we'll have staff that can actually take on more key partnerships and roles and contracts. Maybe not with the city directly. But at the same time, we're really, really interested in building the capacity in the city. The city has no training budget for IT or anything, which means no one in the city can get paid to learn Ruby. So we have real capacity issues inside City Hall that we want to see change, policy changes. And so for us, there is a focus on helping people in the city do stuff that they can't do right now with capacity and skills and understanding. So that's a really important thing for us because we'll only ever have a small amount of staff and capacity and interest, but the city needs to be able to do things itself as well. And we can play a really important role in setting the direction and the tone of where that can go, what are the types of things you need people to know and have to be able to support, you know, that 21st century government. So it's a big thing when you start to hit up against HR, but this stuff needs to be inside City Hall as well.
I think we agree with that too. All right, so maybe in the green shirt right in front. If you want to stand up and say your name and where you're from.
Paul Barham, Kansas City.
Woo.
Christopher, how do you get around are these larger projects that the brigade gets paid to do? Do they go through an RFP process, or how does that mechanics kind of work?
So brigade is all volunteer. So Smart Chicago would never write a check to OpenGov Hack Night because OpenGov Hack Night's volunteer organization that just it's too loose. What we will do is we'll go to a participant of Hack Night and say, you know, we really admire your work. We have this project and we'll write out a contract for that. Because we're a nonprofit, we're not a government entity, we don't necessarily need to go through this really complicated RFP process. Now, we're still part of the Community Foundation, which means we have to follow all the Community Foundation's rules and regs, and everything that we do goes through their legal department. So there's still sort of controls to make sure that, you know, we're just not throwing money everywhere in an irresponsible manner. But because we're not exactly the city, even though they're on our board, we're not bound by the same sort of procurement headaches that some of, and most of our projects are fairly small in scale. All those 10 app projects I mentioned have budgets of $10,000 or less.
I love the idea of you guys making it rain Civic Tech dollars, though. I mean,
Yeah, and maybe it'd just be good. So if you want to, just to clarify, Smart Chicago, you guys are a nonprofit. You work with the city closely, but some of the projects that you're paying Civic Hackers to do are also for other nonprofits. They're not.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. All right, if you have a question.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Betts. I'm with the Civic Innovation team at Google. I really loved hearing everybody's origin story as to how you all came into this in a lot of different backgrounds. I've been sitting here looking at the map and I see Africa completely blank, South America completely blank, the Mideast completely blank. And I'm curious, drawing from your own background, what do you see as the future in terms of putting some more of those pins on those parts of the map?
Well, that's a great question. Rebecca, I was going to say...
Brace, you should talk about it, but I got to tell you, this thing is growing, really fast. There's more on the way. Yeah, I mean, we're almost South America, so...
I joke that Miami needs to caucus with the international brigades anyway. Who are the international folks in the room? There's South Korea's here.
Woo.
I thought I saw Japan for a little while. I'm Catherine Bracey. I'm Code for America's Director of Community Organizing, so I oversee the brigade, but also the international program. We're not recruiting new people. We think it's really important that the energy come from the ground. So Code for Africa is here. They just may not, for whatever reason, want to be in the Brigade network. We have actually, this map is not fully up to date. There should be a pin somewhere in Mexico. We do have some folks here from Mexico who are organizing a Code for Mexico around the country. South America, just no one's raised their hand yet. There is a Code for Latin America that's getting started, and obviously there's a lot of energy around this work in Latin America. But we've taken a very networked approach to this stuff. We don't want to be like the Peace Corps, where it's like we're the civic hackers and we're here to help and go like screw something up. So we're waiting for people to come to us. We've created a really easy way to get started with us, to plug into the network without having to be an official chapter. So, I mean, that's why you don't see the pins there. Not that we're not excited to see groups grow up there if and when. We've only been open to international chapters for about a year as well.
I can tell you too that like from Latin America, I do a lot of collaborative work with Hackers Latin America. There's a huge amount of interest in what the brigades do. I don't know, like it may not, they're doing civic hacking. So it's just a matter of like, do they want track jackets? Like, I mean, how can I incentivize that? I don't know. So.
Yeah, there's a different culture of volunteering in other countries. So it's some cultural specific stuff as well. They don't have philanthropy the way we do to support some of the stuff. So
I think that's really true.
Yep.
We've had a couple people from some of the other international brigades come through Boston to see like how we do things, and they've like had an interesting conversation with someone from Japan who Sakai came to visit with you guys, right? Here in San Francisco. Said the same culture of volunteering is not as prevalent as it is here. And so like there are definitely some cultural issues to bust through.
Yeah, but that being said, there is a ton of energy. And you should definitely check out, I think there's a panel on Code for All tomorrow that our Code for All program manager is leading. And yeah, there's a lot of enthusiasm there and it's really exciting. So check it out. Yes.
Thank you. Michael Condren, City of San Luis Obispo. And the question I have is just, in the context of wanting it to be kind of a ground-up effort from the city side, do you have any suggestions or ideas for how we approach the local tech community and get them excited about civic tech? We're just starting to open up our data and make resources available that folks can do something with. So, any ideas?
That is a fantastic question. That's one we get a lot, and I would love to hear you guys' thoughts. But thank you for that question, and also for like taking those steps and opening up your data and doing that, because that I think is probably what you guys are gonna say is a really good first step. So would love to hear from you guys on that.
Yeah.
They're all looking at me for some reason. One thing that I think we really like, and I think that anyone who's doing creative problem solving really likes, is when you come with problems and not with solutions. So like oftentimes we have some government partners who come with like a rec, or they have like a project they want built. And that's sort of like for the contractor side of things, right? But when you're working with a volunteer group, come with a problem. Come with an interesting thing that our teams can dig into. Don't come with like, well, here's a 25-page rec. Can we get this done? That's probably a good place to start, I think.
I would say, to add on to that, a lot of the ways that volunteers find us literally is through Meetup. And so if you want to just take a real practical step, go browse all the meetups in your area and look for the local JavaScript group or the Ruby group or whatever, and go to them. So it really helps when government comes to us. So I would start literally by browsing Meetup and seeing who in your area might respond to like getting together with you.
I'm gonna plus one that the importance of showing up where people are is like number one thing. Like if Mike didn't show up regularly, like we don't understand all the intricacies of the bureaucracy. So it helps us when you're there and can help us guide and introduce us to new people. So that is like a really key point, I think.
Yeah, I would say having government be a spark to a brigade is not a bad thing at all. It's a totally good thing, given a tone of humility and respect that this is something you'd love to see in your community, and that's a big call to action for people, that your local government is going to support this That's a big thing, but also then not trying to have the government drive it. So sparking and encouraging, setting the table, meeting people where they're at, best way to do it. But then also stepping back and letting the community form and drive rather than trying to drive it from a government perspective. Then it becomes a little bit, people would feel like it's becoming usurped and they don't want to be a part of that. So, but having government start of it is people, yeah, we would have been so excited if people in Oakland or Alameda said like, can we do this thing? They participated early on, which made a huge difference. But yeah, definitely don't be afraid to talk with people and instigate.
Yeah, I love that. I love that idea of being a spark. Yeah, and then also when you're kind of doing that outreach and going out and talking to those folks and letting them know what the city even has and like the energy and the energy you guys have in the city for this kind of stuff. I'm letting them maybe know too, like maybe they're not aware there's a network of folks doing that, and that can kind of be comforting, I think, too, when you're like, you know, but like showing them what's happening in other cities or other brigades or other civic hacking groups around the world. Because that can then maybe take some of the intimidation away too, that they wouldn't just be doing this alone.
I rely on these guys all the time.
Yeah.
I'm like constantly sending emails back and forth, and the Brigade Network, like that's the #1 benefit is like we have each other. When I get completely lost in the weeds, like I can call any of these guys and they'll help me out. You know, they'll bail me out. Or we did a project like this, or you know, why don't you try this approach?
Also, having that really strong champion inside City Hall
That's a
is
big thing.
super critical. It's like I totally agree with what Spike was saying. Like in our early days, if we didn't have Chris and Nigel from the Mayor's Office of New Urban Mechanics, we would feel, I think, less legitimate, less like we had a connection to actually get things done and to integrate with the government as a partner. So having that internal champion, like Spike was saying, don't be afraid to spark it. Like,
All right, so we actually are over time, but maybe as kind of a last quick, does anyone have any burning questions? Because we can, and okay, good. So maybe just like as the last kind of run through, just like what you're really excited for and the next, like that's coming up for your brigade. Does anyone want to start with that?
I'll start. We're going to be working on open data policy in a big way for all. I would love to get it at the county level and all 34 municipalities in Miami-Dade. So that's our next big push. I'm psyched about it. I can't wait.
I'm excited about seeing Code for Boston and Open Oakland and Miami getting some more institutional support, because I've always said that there's maybe a handful of people who, if they were able to go pro and do this stuff full time, I'd be in trouble, and they're all right here.
kind of very contextually, so we have the fellowship coming to the city of Somerville this year, which is just up the street.
We have a fellowship coming to Miami too, so not to steal your thunder, but totally to steal your thunder.
This is what I'm excited about. I don't know why you're not excited about it.
I'm pumped.
But we're super excited about continuing the great relationship we have with the city of Somerville, and I think it's pretty cool that we have fellows going into two cities that have such, kind of advanced brigades. I don't know that that's really happened quite in the same way before, so I'm really looking forward to what we can do with them.
We got the deep dive and the long tail. I mean, that is like, there's nothing better.
So we often get in a little bit of trouble because we talk smack about government technology not being that crash hot. And that sometimes upsets city partners because we're just talking about what we think, and sometimes that isn't the most sensitive thing. But I'm really excited about a thing that we're doing for the first time at City Camp, which is probably January 10th in City Hall, is we're actually doing a Civic Innovation Award for city staff to recognize good public service, to recognize people that are stepping out, taking risks, doing things that are really good inside city, because we value that, and sometimes in the process of having to be real about what's broken, we sometimes forget that the people are there and have emotions and feelings, and there are people doing really good things, and there's no other mechanism in Oakland to recognize and celebrate that. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Awesome. All right, and then on the brigade at large, we're really excited to make it easier for folks to get started, to be more clear about how you can get started. So if you're interested in starting a brigade or sparking a brigade if you're in government, we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to talk to you, so feel free to come up after and, grab us and ask us any questions you have. But thanks for coming out, and,
Thanks, guys.
Enjoy your summer.